Hamdia is not coming on. So Edith, Uki, can we call them up, please? Filmers here, Tracy.
Tracy is supposed to be up here. Hamdia is supposed to be up here. Edith is already here. Ukinebo Dare, executive member and chairman of the board of the Edo State. Ukinebo, we need you right here. And then virtually, no, everybody here is physical. Yeah, so Tracy, Ifeoma, Kinebo, and Edith Hamdia to be moderated by Amma.
Great. So this is the gender lens panel. This is the panel where the guys start saying, what about us? So I think we'll jump straight into it because I know everyone's kind of itching to finish the day. So we'll start with some quick round of introductions and maybe a quick minute or two around your work in the gender lens investing space, what the gaps are, what's working well, what could be done better, and what you need. So I'll start with you, Ife.
Thank you so much. So my name is Ukinebo Dari. Everyone calls me Uki. So my background is really in working with young people and supporting them to build their careers. And this goes entrepreneurship, helping them, supporting young people to get jobs, working with institutions to mainstream the preparation of young people for employment and entrepreneurship, and also supporting them with getting investment into their businesses. So I'm like you said when introducing, the chairman of Edo State Skills Development Agency, where we worked with over 250,000 young people. Some of them had businesses, some of them were trying to get jobs, and then we started from the area of the investment stage, so supporting them with getting skills, supporting them with putting their books together. We did some, Mrs. Ibuka Woshika she came a couple of times and did some work with hundreds of entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. Like the focus was on how do we support them so that they can fit into, the requirements of those who are investing and those who are providing finance. So I know this panel is about the investing, but my experience and my background is more on preparing them to actually access those funds, preparing them to be ready to get those funds. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, before I answer your question, which I promise I will do, I just want to take a pause and talk about how much progress we've seen in gender over my lifetime, which is very long because I am not the average age of Nigerians. I've been in the workforce like many of their lifetimes and or multiples. And so, we are an all-female panel, but of course, it's about gender. Yesterday, we had a panel. This is a pretty technical forum. We had a panel of all women introducing the launch of the Deal Source. And when I started my career, there was not professional panels in a professional setting that was all women, not even if it was about gender. So yes, and that's just one, anecdote about the kind of progress we've all seen. And I've seen it, I've lived in many places around the world. I've seen that in every country I've lived in, like remarkable progress culturally and superficially, optics-wise, and to a certain extent, even deeper down. But there are women in my, acquaintance group who do not consider themselves feminists because they're like, yeah, it's all good now, because it was so bad before and there's so much progress. Everything's all better now. And
you made it.
So, we don't need to worry about that stuff anymore. And I guess, what I would just have a quick reaction is, until there's as many women in the professional paid workforce as there are men, until there are as many women entrepreneurs getting funded as there are men, until there are as many funds staffed by as many women as men, until we are getting an equal wage for the work that we are doing, we still have work to do. And so we can't become complacent and rest on our laurels. We still have to be proactive about it. And so now I'm going to answer your question about, I'm in the hybrid organization. We do impact investing. We have, it has to be SDG positive. We have some preferred privileged sectors, including financial inclusion, that are important to us. But other than, it's not mandatory that SDG 5 be part of the investment, and we don't have any hard and fast screen. We do not have an investment lens, except that we do like to see, it's one of the SDGs that they could be supporting. And so I want to put a pin in that, and I am going to come back to it in a separate question. But, or no, maybe I'll just say it now. I mean, is that appropriate for shouldn't we still be putting that intentionality on it? And I think I do want to talk about in a future question, the sovereign fund in the FONSIS, the Sovereign Investment Fund in Senegal, does have an investment lens window, and it works on the Women's Economic Empowerment Index, which again, I can talk to you about in a future question if you ever give me the mic back. And I think we can get away with it as the UN because our deals are sourced by the UN, where UN Women already has gender intentionality and has a firm gender screen. And a lot of the projects that come to us through the UN and investees do have a gender lens. So we don't have the filter, but we just get lucky that the stuff coming to us is already pretty, good in terms of having women entrepreneurs and women's, I'll talk about the WE index, the Women's Economic Empowerment Index later, but I mean, we shouldn't be off the hook, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
We need to remain intentional about it, ladies and men.
Intentionality is key. Ife, please, let's hear from you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ifoma Malo. I am a co-founder for Clean Technology Hub, and we do 4 things. We're a research hub. We're an entrepreneurship hub, so we support entrepreneurs and startups. We're also an investor focused on micro investing. And we also run training and advocacy program, most especially what we call our community business school and our street business school, where we go into communities and we teach women in their local languages how to start and build sustainable businesses. We're also very focused on niche areas, which is energy access and climate change and sustainability. Those are the only areas that we work on. Thank you.
Sorry, it's on now. Thank you. So good afternoon. My name's Edith Yobakeri. I'm a Ghanaian married to a Nigerian, so hence my name. I'm here today basically as partner and CFO for GIIN Equity. GIIN Equity is a gender lens investment firm. We focus on addressing the gender fund gap in Africa, fully aligned with the 2X challenge. We take an ecosystem approach to investing, and therefore the VC fund is only for investing in female-led businesses, but we also have an accelerator called Sheba, and that supports women to become investment ready. So, our gender fund, our lens is really around investing from seed to Series A. So.
Great. So what's working in the gender lens investment field, and how can we innovate some of the support that we're receiving from the DFIs, the grants that are flying around? What's working and what do we need to see more of?
Thank you. I think in my experience, what I would say is working is that focus on engaging young women at the bottom of the pyramid, the grassroots, yes, the micro investing. If we just approach investments from a very profit-oriented, high-level perspective, then we know definitely that women in rural communities, women with, even in urban cities with micro and small-scale businesses will probably struggle much harder to have access to that. So that focus on, okay, like you said, a lot of progress has been made from before I got into the workforce to now. Yeah, so of course, that focus on gender, that focus on women, and so there's this thing I say a lot, which is that everyone designs, typically, we all design something that fits us, something where we belong. It's difficult to design a system that you don't belong in. So what I think is working is more women getting involved in actual, designing of funds, administering funds. Like she talked about the panel. It was exciting for me sitting today, and the two people who spoke for the country impact investment programs were women. And I'm sure, Mrs. Soisane spoke, and then after her, the next person was also a female. So the fact that more women are leading, not just existing in this space, leading in this space, is definitely making more impact and more focus on how women can benefit. And that in addition to sector focus, where we say, okay, agriculture or energy, sustainability, there's also the gender focus. I think that makes a whole lot of difference. Thank you.
I'll go to Ife next and then come back to you, Tracy. So what do you think is working in the gender lens investing space?
I will have to agree with her. I think, what we have done at Clean Tech Hub is to focus on the bottom of the pyramid. But I also think it's an issue of a lack of awareness. So there's been a lot of work now to upskill women when it comes to understanding the investment landscape. And I'll give a practical example. Habiba is here. I saw her earlier, Habiba Ali of Society Renewable. When I started in the clean energy, renewable energy space, there were about 3 or 4 of us. And there was a rotation. It was almost as if you wanted to balance out a panel, call Habiba or call Ifi or call Hannah Kabir or call, there were 4 of us, and it was just a rotation. Until the 4 of us got together and said, we can't be the only Cinderellas in the room. How are we going to get other women to be part of these conversations and ecosystem? So I can speak for Clean Tech Hub. One of the things we started to do was to deliberately hire women. Because we work in the energy sector, which is still a very male-dominated industry, there are not a lot of women who feel like they have a space in this industry. So our recruitment was skewed towards women. And what that did was immediately it raised the bar. So for instance, I have 40 employees in our company. 30 of them are women. And that's an improvement, because before it used to be 38. But now we're trying to balance it out with more men. But the thing is, you have to have that space for women to want to come in and be a part of an ecosystem. And then specifically in our investment department, we have an all-women investment department. So when we're talking about gender lens investing, they already have the framework under which they apply this gender lens philosophy into how we approach who do we give money, who do we not give money, why would we give you money. And it's not just women we give money, but because that we have those principles, we have about 4 or 5 principles that we apply when we're doing a gender lens investing. It's helpful that you have women who can actually have a nuanced view on how money is deployed and capital is deployed to grow businesses. So that's what we've done in our own case. And Habiba is here. I can tell her story as we go along this panel.
And what kind of capital do you deploy? Is it like the micro level or?
So it's a mix. It's very much blended capital. It's at the micro level where we give out soft loans. But we also, at a very meso level, we also give out capital that is both equity, and then we also have a lot of people who take on debt. The equity part is a bit tricky. A lot of women, which is where I think education has to come in, are not willing to give up shares in their companies. They think you're coming to take over. And sometimes they're not willing to partner because they want to own everything. So the question that we're asking, and I'm willing to hear your point of view based on your experience, is how do we get women to understand what skill is when it comes to investing?
And then we come to the point of people not, the question, is equity right for our context? What do you have to say about She Equity and Sheba? I mean, you guys have done a lot of work connecting some of the dots for women in business. Yeah. So what's working for you and what do you feel could work better?
I think what's working is the intentionality. And I think we've spoken to that there's intentionality around, having a gender lens on, or looking at female-led or female-owned businesses. And I think the research and the statistics out there also support that, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at investment, you're looking at a return on an investment. And it shouldn't, the gender lens shouldn't actually mar that outcome for you, and therefore making it attractive for all genders to be looked at, and women-led business to be looked at as viable, sustainable, scalable, innovative investments is key. So I think what's working is intentionality. What we find is the readiness with women-led businesses to be ready to be investable in terms of the KPIs that we put for investment ready. And you mentioned not giving up equity and things like that, but it's also things around understanding the regulatory environment, understanding how to run your businesses and look at it long term as a going concern. Realizing that, women, I think historically we've done things for survival, and we will continue to dig deep and get it done. But the idea that the gender fund, the gap is what, 42 billion. That is huge. But we do have women who are there. So I think what is not working for me, like in a nutshell, really, is really the investment ready women to scale up and to do well. And that's why with GIIN Equity, that's why Sheba is very important, because Sheba actually creates then a trusted pipeline for GIIN Equity in terms of investments and scaling up women-led businesses.
And with GIIN Equity, did you find that you had to drive the design of what you've been rolling out, or was that co-created? Did you feel that there was a co-creation process?
It's the founders, the partners, we're all women. And we come from a place, coming from a place of knowing, and that's why it's triggering this whole conversation around gender, because we all have experiences, and we all bring those experiences to the fore. What we found with GIIN Equity is maybe, we pitch and we're out there trying to raise funds to be able to support these businesses. But our focus really is on the fact that it's a triple return. We're going to give you a return in terms of your investment. We're also going to, in terms of sustainability and social impact, because most of the time we're looking for businesses that are positively impacting. And it's not so much about, sometimes they say with women-led businesses, use your passion, lead from your heart, put all your sweat equity in it. There's no expectation around the fact that this is a business that must make profits. And this is a business that must bring a return to our investor. And that's where GIIN Equity comes in. Basically, we're saying, whilst we're creating the ecosystem that is holistic and that is bringing women out to be investment ready, we're also very serious about the business of creating returns on investments.
I definitely think we have a bit of an image problem as well, because there is a lot of bias against the fact that you're labeled as a gender lens investing unit, right? Just automatically, it just, triggers poverty, save us, they need saving, help the women. And it's like, well, let's lead with viability. Yes, or we're attacking the men. So let's, probably re-message and lead with viability. Tracy.
I wanted to add that I think because of this progress we've had in our lifetimes, short or long, we don't have to fight as hard to legitimize why gender lens is important. I think a lot of actors have internalized it already. It's an inevitability. So we're no longer fighting that. And another thing that I think we have enough good data points out there that have been established that it no longer feels like affirmative action. It doesn't feel like we're going against Darwinian, survival of the fittest, because we have great female entrepreneurs or women empowering companies that are successful and are profitable. So I think there's enough data points out there that we don't have to prove ourselves as much as we did earlier on. So.
And Tracy, tell us a bit more about what you guys are doing to support technical assistance and capacity building for women where they are in this region.
So we mostly address that through our, like I mentioned in a previous panel, that our concessional financing and our blended finance vehicles have sidecars for pre and post investment technical assistance. So at the point of due diligence, we are analyzing the company, and it needs to be the company needs to want it and need it. And if they ask for it, and they also have to do a cost share. So if they want it, then during the DD, we are analyzing what they need and being responsive to their needs and weighing in on what, a lot of times when we see that the audited financials have errors, we're like, okay, you need to work on your accounting systems and you need to get a new auditor. You need to hire a better auditor. So like those are some of the times that we're offering feedback, But in any event, I think that's a really important tool, and hopefully that's answered the question. So
yeah, let's talk a bit more about technical assistance and capacity building, because I think that's a really critical issue. How are you tackling that, and how are you tackling the conversation with your funders?
Thank you. I think when it comes to technical assistance, it starts even before we talk about even the business skills. Well, typically we go from even the part of getting the technical skills. So like you talked about in energy sector, one thing that we do, because so I'm talking from perspective of different organizations I have led this in, so I'm just saying we. So when you talk, for example, in sectors that are generally male dominated, like technology and so many other sectors, the first thing is that at the point of getting your people to gain these skills, you start there in encouraging women to get those skills and showing them examples of people who are already doing well in those sectors who are female. And then when they get into the program, then they begin to start their businesses. And then there's a lot of requirement for mentorship. So mentorship from women, mentorship from men, consistent investment of time in their business before the investment of money comes into play. So like what you said about Sheba, where the investors have more confidence that this institution has been exposed to, or this individual has been exposed to, what are the things that the fund will be looking for? So has been exposed to separating themselves from their business. Oh, my expenses are different from business expenses. It's not everybody. The money is not just for everything. And how do I manage my responsibilities and then lead people as well? So just building on the soft skills and the hard skills of running a business. So the management skills, the leadership skills, and also the actual sales and marketing. And from the different groups of women that we found that sometimes, or a lot of times, women, if I'm producing something, I like to produce, but then there's the fear for many women of going out there and actually being out there to sell. So being able to bring in that confidence in marketing and sales and in pitching and all of that comes into that process as well. And you find out when you do the complete wraparound support from growing the business, being able to sell, being able to lead, and then you have a more confident leader in that woman who will also play the role of mentoring others and supporting them to grow as well.
Okay, so I'll answer that question very briefly with a story. We were doing a project in Niger State in 2017 or 2018. And this was us working with mini grid companies to electrify communities in that state. One of the things we were also doing was electrifying primary healthcare centers. We ran into a woman, her name is Halima, who we found bleeding at the primary healthcare center that we went to. She had been physically assaulted by her husband. And we started to ask questions about why she was there, how this came to be. Very complicated family story. Man has 2 wives. They have several children. Many of them are not going to school. There was no food. So this happened that morning. It had been happening, but we met her there. So one of the things we asked her was, what can we do to support you? After we got her assistance with healthcare, she said she wanted to start a business. Okay, so what can you do? She then said she knows how to make drinks, kunu and zobo. Kunu is a milky drink that is extracted from coconut and milk. You add a bit of milk to it, and it's very popular in the northern part of the country. So we gave her, to cut the long story short, we gave her a solar cooler, one, and told her taught her how to start a business. We were in the community for 1 week, so taught her how to use it and how to start a business. Exactly 6 weeks later, she called us and asked if we could give her another one. This time we gave her 3, but it was on a loan, it was on a loan basis, and told her that she had to pay back for them, for those coolers, over a 9-month period. She paid back in 3 months. Right now, Halima is an employer of 13 people. Yes. Her husband, who used to be an Okada driver, sold the Okada and invested in the family business. They are now a family. But this is the story
That's one who used to beat her.
Yes. Yeah, it's now a family business. To show you how she scaled, because one of the other things we did was we went back to that community and then we started teaching her. This is how our community business school and our street business school started. So we taught her how to run a sustainable business. What is a profit? What is a revenue? What is a turnover? How do you make sure that you're not mixing the business money with family money, all of that. And we taught her in Hausa, because she does not speak a word of English, right? And so what I told the team at the time was, let's start to document this, because there's an opportunity to scale. And then not only that, so the business is no longer just selling cold drinks. They now do solar charging, because there's no electricity in these communities. So her kiosk, she now has a whole kiosk, is a charging point. So if you're coming to charge your phone, you're paying something like 200 naira, for 3 hours. And there's a there's a long line to wait. So we have cold drinks, we have phone charging, we have several other businesses around. People are coming from other communities to come and patronize them and replicating the same businesses. We did the same in Abia State. The question is, how then do we create several Halimas? How then do we create opportunities to invest in women like her? How do we help them scale? And how do we encourage an ecosystem of women investors who can understand that if you invest in other women, your return on profit is very high?
And how do DFI's foundations partners plug into enabling this? That's a question for you as well. What would you say to a social investor, like a foundation?
One of the challenges we've had with DFIs are that they're slowly and surely almost becoming, and please don't take this as a criticism for those of you in the room, like private equity firms. So when they're asking for, return on investments, they're asking for documentations, the sort of things that they're asking for with very short tenures sometimes, and sometimes unrealistic tenures, because of what they say they have seen in other places. It's very disadvantageous. So I think one of the things that we have done, we critically try to do all the time, is to give feedback to them, to say, based on what we see in Nigeria, these things that you are saying will not work. We need longer tenures. We need more patient capital. And here are some of the specific things you have to consider when you're thinking about funding women. I also have to say the good parts, because part of the reason why Clean Tech Hub grew was because one donor financial institution and one global philanthropy took a chance on us. When we were knocking at doors, there were several people who refused and said, no, they didn't understand what we're doing, they didn't listen to us. It took one donor who gave us a very, very big grant, and then one global philanthropy who also gave us money to completely change the equation for us. So now we have all sorts of valuations being done on our company, and we have people who are wanting to fund us with kind of money I would never have thought about 6-7 years ago.
Great case study, great case study. So wrapping up, as I know we have a hard stop at 4. Edith, final words from you.
Sorry. I just think it's important that we address the perceptions that are linked with investing in women. We need to make people understand that investing in women is not charity. We need to show that, women are building innovative, impactful and profitable businesses. Our investee companies are in healthcare, they're in energy, they're in food. That women-owned businesses make sense. And that's why we're in it. So short and sweet.
Edith. Tracy, any last thoughts before we open up to the audience for a few minutes?
Yeah, I mean, remain intentional and consider using screens or indices that look at broad what women's economic empowerment, not just binary, is it a woman entrepreneur, yes or no, but kind of a more nuanced, how many women are in management? How many are there pro-women human resources policies? What is your retention rate of women? What does the supply chain look like? Is there fair trade for women suppliers? What does your product or service do to help women in their get through their day-to-day tasks, in rural environments, for example? So those would be my two final thoughts.
And for you, what are the things that DFIs themselves can change to enable more gender lens investing? What do you think it's emerging as new trends, and what are the areas for opportunities to improve the outcomes, Tracy?
Yeah. So again, that intentionality. So we get, in fact, when we are using gender lens, it's usually because, for example, GAC, they have stringent gender impact criteria. So we be intentional and force your investees, your grantees, donors to be intentional, and that will flow.
Okay, I think I just want to highlight something we haven't spoken about, which is the policy side of things, because the truth of the matter is no matter what happens, unless there's policy that supports it, it becomes very difficult to scale. And when you think about different initiatives that are going straight to give funds to women, the interesting thing about the fund of funds is you're giving the funds in many cases to banking institutions and traditional institutions to give the money to the women. Now, do the women understand these systems? Do they understand how these organizations work? And do those organizations, are they really going to give the money to women? That's the question. So how do we track that? And how do we look at policy from government level to institutional level to ensure that this is actually functioning? I know, I mean, just last week of a situation where it's a fund and women applied, and then they were doing interviews for who was going to get the fund. And the people on the Zoom call could hear someone at the back saying something like, then they asked the lady, who, every time we ask you a question, we hear some whispering, who is that? And then it's her husband. So like it's actually his business, but then because there's a lot of investment in women-owned businesses, of course, they just changed the papers and then he put her forward. So is that really a women-owned business? So just the policy and then the more hands-on approach, I think. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think we'll open up for questions. Any questions from the audience? One.
All right, thank you. Hello, my name is Naamano. I work with Challenges Group Ghana. So my question is around what you just ended with. So at Challenges Group Ghana, we're currently working on a feasibility study around an innovation fund for SE Ghana. And this fund is focused on gender outcomes and then climate as well. Just in discussing how to engage some social enterprises to kind of get an idea of, why am I so nervous?
No need to be nervous. Go ahead now.
Okay, that helped. Right. So, like I was saying, just in talking with people about how to engage social enterprises, about what their needs are and things like that, we've been warned about the whole thing about gender washing or gender labeling. So I'm just wondering, I'm sure on a long-term basis, you'll be able to discover that this enterprise claims to be focused on, women, but it's actually not. But in a short-term basis, how would you be able to identify that? And then my second question is around, I was speaking with someone I consider as an expert in this gender space, and the person was saying things around female-led enterprises usually have some peculiar characteristics. So, for example, women generally would want their enterprises to grow more organically. They seem to be a bit more emotionally connected to their business. So they might be slow on certain decision makings. They might be a bit risk averse. So I'm just wondering about your technical assistant. How do you bring in that context? Because women are women. How do you bring in that context? Are you able to
kind of like situate whatever enterprise support you do in the context of the fact that this is a woman-led business. Thank you.
Just to give information. So I serve on the IC of a gender fund, Alethea Capital. So Alethea has like, where I think we have like $100 million. And it's women across Africa and businesses. And quite a number of, we've funded quite a number of businesses from South Africa to Nigeria to Ghana to other parts of Africa. And we're still super active and raising additional funds. So for even the ones, and our ticket sizes can be from anything from $1 million up to, and I think we've done about 7 or a bit more in some cases. So I'm saying that because of some of the businesses that are ready to scale or at scale and are looking for larger ticket funds. And to say any of those things don't hold waters. Don't listen to any preconceived notions that people have. There are many amazing African women building amazing businesses. And they're getting bolder and more courageous by the day. And as the fund is becoming more available, they're stepping forward to do really great things. I mean, it's always such a joy to read some of those business plans as an IC member preparing to say yes or no. But trust me, the girls are coming.
Girls are coming. I like that. And also intentionality, right? Just look in terms of viability. Let's go after the viable businesses. And if it happens to be a woman-led business, fine. We'll do with the rest. Any other comments to that particular question?
Just to answer your question, you're right that women tend to be more risk averse. There was some fund that we helped manage for the African Clean Energy Fund. And out of the people, I think the ticket price was between $1 million to $5 million. There were 2 or 3 women that were shortlisted for that fund. And I think most of them got the lower end of the fund, specifically because they were not willing to dilute their shareholdings. There were all sorts of concerns that they had. I could relate with it because also Clean Tech Hub had to fail. In 2016, when I started the company with my own trust fund, completely lost all that money and had to go back to the drawing board, went back to school to understand what investment and finance was. So I was a founder and now I'm a co-founder because I had to dilute, what my holdings were in the company. But it took some sort of education, information for me to get to that mindset shift and losing a lot of money in the process. But we have to do more to educate women on why this is a risk worth taking, because they see it as a risk, obviously, but then, educate them about why this is beneficial to them in the long run.
Let me just quickly weigh in to say that I think there's also a breed of feminists going back to the old school era where it was women didn't want to acknowledge that there were any different from men, like socially, sociologically, psychologically, men and women are completely interchangeable. And so we always want to be considered exactly just like a man. And, we had an entrepreneur on the stage yesterday, Constance, who said, oh no, women are much more, they want to grow the business organically. They are more risk averse. They are going to be more cautious. And you hear that and you think like, well, is that true or is that just a subjective statement? And I think, we're probably not informed on that. We need sociologists and psychologists to help and those in their studies to help us acknowledge that or understand it better. But I think, intuitively, we're not interchangeable. There are sociological differences. As a random aside data point, there was an article in the Washington Post that surveyed people who have been on commercial jets who've seen too many movies and saying, if your plane was going down, the pilots were no longer available, do you think you could land the plane with help from air traffic control to like bring you in? And 80% of men said, yes, I could land the plane. And 20% of women said, yes, they could land the plane. And I think that kind of is that also jives with my intuition that there really are differences in terms of women entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs, that we need to, I think it's okay to acknowledge that and take it into account, and that doesn't dilute we can be different but equal.
Hello. I'm Ifwa. I'm the co-founder and country manager for Phoenix Technologies. We started as a ride-hailing app and soon had to pivot our business to business vehicle financing. As a way of impact, we are providing decent jobs to gig workers, and we had a drive to own program that gives drivers cars they work to pay for. And so the revenue they generate from driving, they use it to pay for their cars. Soon enough, we were doing good as, a completely bootstrapped company. However, we realized that the demand for what we are offering, the program that we're running to support the drivers, was outweighing our finances. And so that brings me to this room, and I've been working with Justina to raise some finance. However, I'm completely new to this environment, and that knowledge gap and that technical support is kind of lost. You talk to an investor, and he says that, oh, continue doing what you're doing. In the next 2 years, we'll look at you. How do I move from where I am now to being able to access finance and be able to supply the customers that are in waiting? We're talking, there's a lot of money in the room, but I'm new to the venture capital raising. I'm just used to using family money to run the business. How do I get the necessary support to scale? Thank you.
GIIN equity. What would you advise our dear Phoenix lady?
You know, as she was talking, this is the story of many of us, you know, family money, friends, and raising your own thing, bootstrapping, getting on with it. And then you have what you think is it's a solid base. It just needs somebody to put the funding in because you're willing to do the work. And you don't get it because they're telling you about levels you got to reach, KPIs you got to, and someone saying, come back in 2 years. Will you be there in 2 years? Is the question. You know, so this is something where I think one of the things I would advise is really just identifying, first of all, for yourself, what your gaps are, not what they're telling you your gaps are. You know what you do best. You know where your opportunities for improvements are. What are those things? How do you access help to get you up on those things. And then remember too that in terms of funding, in the same way as there's so many of us looking for funds, there's so many of funds looking at with different lenses. They don't all have the same lens for looking at things. And so I think I understand your pain, but see it more as an exciting opportunity to be in a room where you then get to see what's out there, go back, work out what your gaps are, how you can scale those gaps, how someone like Sheba does that kind of stuff, really, in terms of just giving you the support to be investment ready, tick all the boxes kind of thing. And I think there's so many other accelerators out there which could help.
Definitely look into the ecosystem, what's available, incubation, acceleration. Sometimes there's seed funding available, but your biggest investor is actually your customer. So you have a demand like that from what you're describing. Try and figure out what business models you can now adapt, adopt, introduce to the captive audience that you claim you have. It could be something totally different, but related to what you're doing. But it could be a way of you bridging that gap between revenue and getting to where you want to get to in terms of potentially external funding. But external funding is not easy. You know, it's not easy to just get it and manage it, report on it, monitor, evaluate. I mean, all of these things are requirements. So I always advise startups like yourself not to feel that external investment is the be all and end all, because it's not. It's very popularized. Everyone's talking about, venture capital, private equity, all these kinds of, it's not look at your business model and your revenue streams very, very carefully. And if you don't have various options, figure out how you can brainstorm new solutions for revenue in the meantime. Okay. I think, did you have a comment? Okay.
I want to weigh in to say that this is not an immediate solution, but something that we have in other markets is crowdfunding. And so that's a really great platform to get your story out there, and it resonates with someone, and they can make just a grant, or, a grant, and you give them a customer benefit, later on for being an early investor. And there is an African crowdfunding association that's trying to ease the regulatory concerns and standardize them so that it can become something that we use in Africa. And that is something that colleagues of mine at the UN are working on in terms of the regulatory regime in Ghana. It's not going to be available tomorrow, but if you are still around in 2 years and somebody says come back in 2 years, maybe by then there'll be some crowdfunding opportunities available as well.
More comments from the panel, and then I think we'll have to wrap up. Our time is up.
Very quickly, there was a session yesterday on transaction advisory. Were you there? You were on that. So that PowerPoint presentation that was part of the process, if you take everything that is in that, there were about 3 or 4 slides. She ran through it very quickly. This was Dina that did the presentation. Take everything there, take each of them, and then begin to sort of structure your business. Do I have this? Do I have that? Do I have this? Because it was very detailed. There are 2 things it's doing for you. It is helping you structure your business, but in the event that you need to raise money, it is also preparing you for fundraise, right? I thought that PowerPoint presentation was just spot on, right on the money. And so if you're thinking, because in the end you might not even want to raise money or need to raise money, but in the event that you do, that is a perfect archetype of what people who want to give money are looking for, and even more importantly, it would help you strengthen your business structure.
Okay. I'll just add to that. Okay, from another perspective entirely, which is that I know everything that everyone is saying might sound like so all up in the air, like how am I going to do this? Maybe you're even already stretched completely. Like, look, I have to keep the business running. Where do I find the bandwidth for all this one you're saying? I would advise, like, just go online, search for any incubation programs or organizations that support businesses. You might not be looking for money now. Maybe just, okay, I want to, like you said, transaction advisory, I want to raise money for my business, or I want to improve my business. Just creating that room and maybe look into ways to create some bandwidth for yourself, maybe by expanding your team or something, because you have to put in that time to be able to get that result that you want. You need to be able to put in the time, okay? Because I see your face and I'm like, I know, but then that's what I'd advise, okay? All right.
If I hope that answered your question. Okay, guys, thanks so much to the panel for your inputs, and thanks for your questions, guys.
Thank you.
All the best.